We are back on your screens. Welcome to the Camnet Breakfast Show, Wednesday edition. Governor here with me, Patrick Soko. I will be joined by Sharon Kalimbula later on. And to just get started with, with our program this morning, we'll go straight to the morning booster so that we can get exercising in the morning.
Good morning and welcome to the Health Corner here on the Breakfast Show. I am Dr. Nakubyanam Fire. So this week we are talking about fibroids, and we have already discussed what are fibroids. We say that fibroids are tumors, benign tumors that grow inside the uterus or the womb or around the uterus. So these are usually caused by certain risk factors such as genetic composition. So if you have a family history of having fibroids, you are at risk of having fibroids as well. Then also your diet, if you eat so much saturated fats, you increase your risk of having fibroids. And age as well. So women who are between the age of 40 to 50 are at risk of having fibroids, but also even younger women can also have fibroids. So today I want to look at the signs and symptoms. How can you know, or what are some of the signs that you would experience to be able to tell that you are having fibroids? So usually people who have fibroids would experience what we call menorrhagia. And so this is a situation or a condition where you have your periods, but your periods are very heavy. So you have heavy menstrual bleeding. Then they might also have metorrhagia, which is where your periods usually come on a regular basis, but now they start coming at different intervals. So usually if you experience your periods every 28 days, you might start seeing irregularities in the intervals. So you might experience your periods maybe 25 days from the last period, or even sometimes it might go up to 30 days. So the interval might change. Then you might also be experiencing very painful periods. So people who have fibroids might experience very painful periods. So they might have pain during their periods, and sometimes they might also experience pain when having sexual intercourse. So these are some of the symptoms of people who have fibroids. They might also notice that depending on the size of the fibroids and how big they have grown, they might notice that their stomach or their abdomen becomes distended, and so you might start looking pregnant even when you are not pregnant, because the uterus is growing in size because of the fibroids that are growing inside. And so fibroids can vary in size. Sometimes they are very, very small, and other times they can even grow to as big as a pumpkin. So it depends on the size that you have, and if you have a very big fibroid, it might look like you are pregnant even when you are not. So these are some of the signs that people with fibroids would experience, and so make sure that you look out for some of these symptoms. If you experience any of these symptoms, then you need to go to the hospital and have yourself checked for fibroids, and also other conditions that affect women that might also be causing these similar symptoms, because it's not only fibroids that can cause this, even other conditions as well can be able to cause these symptoms. So make sure you get yourself checked in the hospital to be able to get the right diagnosis and the right treatment. So tomorrow we'll talk about how fibroids are diagnosed and how they are treated in the hospital. So make sure you watch tomorrow's episode as well. If you missed the other episodes, make sure that you go back and try to watch them on my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Nakubyanam Fire, or you can watch them on Facebook as well, on Camnet TV. So I do hope you have learned something today. I will see you again tomorrow. Stay healthy.
Well, there you have it. That was the health corner and not the morning booster. We were just talking about symptoms of fibroids. I hope you managed to learn one or two things from Dr. Mufaya there. She never disappoints in terms of giving us that update on the health corner. It is always important that we get abreast with what we can do when we encounter a certain condition, and the health corner is there for you to just get you abreast with various health matters. Madam.
Indeed, Patrick, this week being Youth Week, we encourage all the young people to go and have yourselves checked. It doesn't matter what age you are. I think everybody is at risk of encountering such illnesses, and therefore it's important to check and stay healthy in your youthhood so that you can be optimizing your potential while you're still young. I believe that youthhood is not even about feeling youthful, but it's about the age, Patrick.
Exactly.
Some people would say, no, I feel youthful, but they are 40 or 46. But you're not a youth, and eventually at some point you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel your age, you're not going to optimize your potential as a youth should. And therefore it's important that while you are young, you just do what you can do and put things together so that when you're 40, life should begin for you.
Interesting. You may, now that we mentioned the aspect of, no, I'm youthful. That's how these older people have been pitching to the position of youth chairman.
Youth chairman, especially in politics.
When they know that you're no longer a youth, but you still want to be
especially in politics,
a
but
youth
if you
chairman.
find Camnet was once youth chairman, you know, and I don't understand how.
Nikando Mufalari as well.
Because not very long from then, he's above 50, you know. So you're wondering, say, Nishi, how do they calculate years, these guys?
Yes.
You know, he was youth chairman, there was Sampa, was also youth chairman for the Patriotic Front. I think at the moment is when we have youth chairmen that are seemingly youthful, but they are also above 35.
Yes. So for me, I think that's a mismatch. You know, you need the young people to represent their interests, and they are well placed to do that because they understand the needs of their times, and it is only advisable that they do the needful in terms of representing themselves and championing their agenda.
Indeed.
Yeah, before we get too much into details, we have to know how this currency is performing.
It's been ballooning. It's been bullish of late. Let's look at it.
Yeah, let's have a look at it.
The Great British Pound is buying at 24 kwacha 50 ngwe and selling at 24 kwacha 98 ngwe. The United States dollars is at 20 kwacha 13 ngwe and selling at 20 kwacha 52 ngwe. The euro is at 21 kwacha 56 ngwe and selling at 21 kwacha 99 ngwe. The South African rand is at 1 kwacha 11 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 13 ngwe. Those are your money markets as of today, the 15th of March 2023. We are exactly the middle of the month, Patrick, and
exactly.
the kwacha hasn't been faring very well of late. I think the past 2 weeks it's been on that trajectory. We just hope that it doesn't hit 22, 24.
Yes.
I'm hoping for that. My fingers are really crossed for that. And we pray. If at all prayer can work in this instance, we are praying while putting things in order and see to it that it doesn't go beyond.
Yeah, when things go to the worst, we have to just resort to prayer. That probably we can be assisted.
Be the first thing.
We can be assisted with the necessary wisdom to see how to work on the kwacha.
Yeah.
But it is 2020 now. What I mean is that buying on 20
and selling
on 20. And we were actually anticipating this, and because we saw the way it was depreciating. And like you area said, you know, we don't need a weaker currency in these current economic conditions. So it shows that we need to do more as a country in terms of stabilizing this currency, because it is really not performing good. So if the currency misbehaves, it means that even our friends who are in cross-border trade are highly affected. And even if you want to import things, it becomes difficult because you have to pay more dollars. You have to pay more compared to when the kwacha is strong, because the stronger kwacha that we had sometime in October, November, December had been helpful to the business community and the country at large in terms of helping to stabilize the prices of commodities. But now you can see that prices of goods and services will continue to escalate on account of a depreciation of the kwacha, which is not good, because if we've seen that the Bank of Zambia has been intervening through the introduction of through the regulation of the monetary policy. But again, we are seeing that it seems to be not yielding the desired outcomes. We hope that they'll continue to shift gears in terms of just making sure that the currency stabilizes. But as things stand, the picture is gloomy, and we do not want this gloomy picture to continue, because it spells misery upon the general public.
Indeed, Patrick. This week, President Hakainde Hichilema is on the Copper Belt, at least the whole week, interacting with different party officials. He interacted with the youth on Wednesday, Patrick. He interacted with the party officials on Monday, where he said a lot of things, and we followed that conversation that he had with them. And he promised better. He promised the party officials better, and the country at large better. A lot of issues came into play. The issues of KCM came into play, being a Copper Belt. You know, KCM is like a father of Copper Belt, to say the least, you know. When things are not... Clearly, that's what it means, because the way people are complaining, the way these church mother bodies from the Copper Belt came to Lusaka to just have a press briefing here, closer to the president, so that he could probably hear, you know, they could speak to him through the media. Different stakeholders from the Copper Belt are talking about this thing. So him having a say on this and promising to actually see to either the mining sector operate at optimum level, at full capacity, was hope enough for people that are championing KCM issue and Vedanta issue. Let's look at this, and we also look at the Ukutumpo. You know, the president was in high spirit, and
yeah, that's politics.
He learned a lot of Bemba on the Copper Belt. I'm afraid by the time he's finishing a week, Patrick, it will be a full dictionary.
I hope he does not learn the entire dictionary of the Jerabos
language.
Yeah.
You know, these are the dangers of chilling with Abba Daddy. You know, they taught the big man things that he was not supposed to be mentioning there. So let's look at the story from Harry Kalaba. He commented on this, among other stakeholders that also commented on the story. Let's look at this.
Citizens, first we call for sobriety amongst leaders. We would want to see leaders focusing more on national development as opposed to finger pointing and demeaning each other in public. I think that's our take.
We realize that, you know, as a Republican president, he was not supposed to come out strongly the way he came out, you know, attacking, you know, our former Republican president, Mr. Edgar Chagwa. I want to say that we are not in support of what we are seeing Mr. Chagwa Lungu, you know, coming on the political scene, giving some, you know, political sentiments, which is not right, because he is a former Republican president who deserves to be respected, and he should be seated comfortably home, whereby he is receiving the rewards of his hard work in the previous regime.
Planting information and stories so that we start fighting amongst ourselves, so that we will at the Lola Airport. there, 2 or so days before election, somebody stood there and said, I'm handing over power to myself. I'm handing over power to myself. And when I come back, I will lock up that chap, and this time he will die in prison. Now me, I'm seated here. You think you can come back and lock me up and kill me? Their belief is that they can divide us over Black Mountain. No, we will not be divided over the Black Mountain. They can divide us over CDF. No, they will not divide us over CDF. They will divide us over our youth. No, they will not divide us. They will not divide us over cabinet ministers. If a minister has not answered your call this year, whomever,
we are so expectant and very optimistic that the president will make a decision on KCM Vendetta legal impasse. And our position is that President Hakainde Hichilema should hand over KCM to Vendetta Resources as the legal owners. We believe that Vendetta Resources are not only the legal owners, but they have the financial capacity and the high expertise and strong business acumen to operate KCM effectively and efficiently and create the much needed employment and business opportunities. And our appeal to the Zambian people, in an event that government hands over KCM to Vendetta Resources, we should be able to support the vision of President Hakainde Hichilema by working extremely hard and stand committed to ensure that KCM gets back to its normal operations. We believe that Vendetta, being an investor, cannot achieve the objectives alone. It will require the collective efforts of every stakeholder. Our appeal to the government is that they should honor their promise. The Minister of Mines indicated 2 months ago that government will make a decision on KCM and Vendetta legal resources.
Well, there you have it. Those are the stories that were making the headlines in the Camnet main news. I hope you did manage to catch them. If you didn't, I hope you've managed. And those stories are up for grabs in terms of commenting and giving your perspective. We've zoomed in stories pertaining to politics, and that's where President Hakainde Hichilema is on the copper belt, where he was verbally attacking his predecessor, Ed Galungu, who he accused of starting the fight as well, because while in government, it did threaten him on a number of occasions, and threatened to imprison him and making sure that he rots in jail. But now that is the president, he says, how can you do that? And you want to come in, all those things. Yeah, quite interesting stories there in the political front. Indeed, but this story has received a lot of feedback from opposition political parties who feel, wow, the language was quite strong. Others feel it is not necessary for the two statesmen to continue attacking each other in public. And that was Hari Kalaba, who was of the view to say they shouldn't be taking their squabbles in public.
And this is shortly after one of Rupiah Banda's sons was reminding the two heads of state, former head of state and the current head of state, to say, have a conversation and be relatable to one another, be good to one another, because the country really needs you. And this is what my father, Rupiah Banda, would have loved. You know, there was a memorial on Saturday, Patrick, you are aware. And this is one of the key things that came out prominent, you know, reminding the two leaders to just put the differences aside and move on. Unfortunately, former President Edgar Lungu was not part of that memorial service and the laying of wreaths at his grave, but he made his way to church on Sunday at one of the United Church of Zambia congregations here in Tendere, just near our office, where he made a lot of statements which seemingly did not sit well with the other guy, as he always said, to say the guy. You know, so yeah, and it's like they provoked one another, and each one of them took advantage of the podium they were given to air out whatever they wanted to air out. However, this has received a lot of wide condemnation from various stakeholders. According to them, the head of state is the head of state for the whole nation, and therefore he needs to be very careful with what he says and when he says it. There are certain things he's supposed to say closed doors with his political party officials, not on national television or to the nation, as it were, on Monday. But we still laugh about it. Otherwise, there was a new phrase that came out.
You see, at the end of the day, the president did say quite a lot of things, but the Kutumpa things become prominent, and Zambians pay attention to petty issues. Yes, so it is just important that probably we stay away from petty politics, because these unimportant things tend to overshadow what the important things the president was talking about.
Politics is a game,
you understand?
Patrick, but there needs to have some fun.
It is a game, but again, we make a mistake because politics now is becoming the major tool being used to divide the nation.
Yeah.
If you look at the followers of former President ECL and those who follow President Hakainde Hichilema, this discourse brings a lot of division and further tension. But when we go past elections, it doesn't matter who you voted for. We need to make sure that we heal. Yeah. And President Hichilema, that's one of his tasks. I remember he's been vivid on this subject in terms of him working towards addressing, uniting the country. But if you see such maneuvers, they tend to affect the one of his objectives, which is to unite this country. You
tend to wonder if he's sticking to his or he's just politicking.
Exactly, that's what I mean. And if we are, politics shouldn't be a dividing factor. If you look at issues pertaining to tribal and anything, it is just politics, because Zambians themselves are naturally united, and they understand each other. But you'd find that it is politics that brings the confusion. So it is the way we do our politics that we need to clean. If we do clean politics, I'm sure that everything else will be okay. They say that politics is a dirty game. Others also argue to say it is the players, the dirty players, that tend to make politics to be a dirty game. You see now, the events that unfolded on the Copper Belt reflect that same dirty game, where this one would say, losing does not stop me from commenting from these. Does not stop me from worshiping my God.
Worshiping my God. Does not stop me from going to certain areas.
Then the other time when he was appearing before the Anti-Corruption Commission, someone goes and say, points at the prices of commodities. You understand? To say, this is what you did while in opposition, let me do it to you. You understand?
I think
so at the end of the day,
misses politics.
So at the end of the day, you get the sense.
The pool is still open.
Yeah, others. I think that's also another aspect where others have said the former head of state should just be categorical and come back to politics. And as opposed to holding on to say he has retired, but he wants to continue entangling himself into politics. Others have been of the view that he needs to rest and focus on how he can play his role.
On his foundation.
Even the foundation.
Which looks like
but unfortunately, he hasn't been making noise about his foundation. No. Apart from the politics that has emerged.
I think he was forced to form that foundation.
Are you sure?
I'm thinking in those lines, because really 2 years down the line, a lot of activities would have happened. We would have seen those things, but we just saw the launch, and the color that they picked being blue, it looked like it's MMD for me. Like, what's happening?
So what you mean? You are discouraging me from having something red? Because you think I'm UPND.
I think you should do away with that, honestly. I'm going to be very honest with you.
What about if I put on green? You say I'm PF. If I put on pink, you say I'm DP.
Pink is no longer there.
If I put on what? Yellow, you say I'm CP.
It's no longer there. Anyways, let's look at one of the stories as we zoom in. One of our first guests talking about issues to do with the environment. Our interview is based on the day that is coming forth, a World Environmental Day.
With the World Forest Day.
Forest Day. And we will have a conversation surrounding that. But before that, let's just look at one of the stories that we covered relating to the environment, where an environmentalist, Eugene Kabilika, has observed with concern that climate change poses threats to national household and national food security. Several hectares of maize fields in Gwembe district of southern province have been severely affected due to dry spells that have hit the area. Let's look at this.
The effects of climate change have been witnessed in Zambia. The farming seasons are no longer beginning in October, and flash floods witnessed in the 2022-2023 farming season have brought misery upon farmers. The rainfall patterns have become more unpredictable, with prolonged dry spells that have put many farmers out of business, lead to household food insecurity, and overall threaten national food security. And this is Gwembe district in southern province that has been hit by dry spells, thus affecting the maize crop.
It has been dry, no rains, ever since I applied fertilizer. Everything is gone. I have lost everything.
The local leadership is concerned that the area may be affected by hunger.
At the time that the maize was blooming so that they could make the actual cobs, the maize has dried. And this scenario you see behind in the background, this is what constitutes a lot of fields in Gwembe.
It is worth noting that in order to guard against food insecurity, over the years, the Zambian government and its cooperating partners have been urging farmers to take up climate change adaptation measures such as drip irrigation and mulching of the ground to lock in moisture. Growing early maturing and short-season maize varieties has also been suggested as a climate adaptation measure. But others like the participatory, ecological, land use management, Pelam Zambia, insist on farming God's way.
Just on climate change, we see that indigenous seed can be more resilient to the weather depending on the areas that you are planting those seeds, unlike hybrid seeds. So there's quite a lot of benefits that indigenous seeds have, and we need the policy, the local policies, the regional as well as global policies to change.
Environmentalist Eugene Kabirika says climate change can disrupt food availability, reduce access to food, and affect food quality. Hence the need to be proactive as a country.
That's why we always refer to agroecology as the best way of dealing with agriculture. You start slowly, and in the end, once you get it right, I can tell you that Zambia can have health benefits. At the same time, you reduce on the use of chemicals, not only fertilizer, but also the chemicals that go with it.
Meanwhile, the German government has pledged to complement the Zambian government to mitigate the negative effects of climate change.
Climate smart agriculture, meaning again assisting farmers transferring knowledge which crops are more resilient to climate change, to the effects of droughts, but also flash floods. How again with relatively simple means farmers can adapt their farming.
Well, collective efforts are crucial if Zambia is to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 13 that calls for urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. Patrick Soko, Camnet News. Well, there you have it. Quite interesting stories there bordering on climate change issues. And in studio, we've been joined by the Media Network Action on Climate Change. And I have the executive coordinator, Mr. Camnet, to help us discuss various issues pertaining to climate change, and especially that soon, on the 21st of March, the country will be commemorating a World Forest Day. And Mr. Piri, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'm really excited to be here.
Interesting. This organization that champions the media and climate change is quite new in Zambia. You have to bring us up to speed with your mandate and what do you do?
Well, thanks very much, Patrick, once again, and thanks very much to Camnet for this opportunity. Like you've indicated, the Media Network Action on Climate Change is quite a new baby on the block, so to say.
How long? How old is it?
Well, about 6 months plus, yeah, because we got registered last year in July.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think from July we've hit the ground running, really trying to see how best we can also, as a media, as a media NGO, how best we can also, play our part, because really the issue we're talking about needs concerted efforts from everybody, really, if we're going to see some progress in that aspect. So that is basically, maybe briefly, about the Media Network Action on Climate Change. We've got journalist members countrywide, I must mention.
Interesting. What does it take to be a member of the network?
Of course, the name says it all, climate change, but what are you trying to achieve at the end of the day with this movement of journalists?
Yeah, basically, maybe I draw you to some of our objectives, really, is just to try and promote and enhance media coverage, transparency and accountability in terms of climate change and environmental matters in this country. We do this through investigation, research, training, and capacity building for journalists and media houses. What we learned over the years, of practicing, is that I think climate change, as a sector, so to say, has a bit of some technical jargon, and this, I think, has in a way restricted journalists, coverage of this space. How do you break some of these terms that you find in climate change reporting for the ordinary person to pick it or understand? And so we felt maybe we could try to come in and try just to enhance that aspect of training, continuous training, so that this is broken down, so that the ordinary person there can get the small scale farmers that are impacted, the ordinary woman at household level that are impacted by climate change are able to understand and be able to without understanding it becomes very difficult for one to participate and ensure that we are talking about mitigation now. What does one understand if we are going to mitigate a topic that they are not able to comprehend? And so we felt we needed to do that. And so part of our mandate is also awareness, creating in communities, as we sit here, I know we'll be able maybe to touch some of those. We know what is happening in our neighboring country, Malawi. It also happened here in Zambia. We're talking about cyclone, Freddy. So it's quite huge. It's quite massive, and basically this all falls on the media and journalists to communicate the right information.
Climate change is not...
Sorry, I haven't answered part of your question. You did talk about, members. How does one become a member?
Yeah.
Basically, first and foremost, journalist, being a journalist, that could be maybe the first qualification. But of course, we do not only focus on journalists, even other professions, if they would want to join the network, are welcome. But those that we have, the majority that we have as of now, are journalists that are freelance journalists, as well as those that are working for the different media organizations.
Affiliate? Yeah. Meaning they need to pay subscription or something like that?
Well, no, at the moment, no. We haven't got any subscription fee that journalists is required to pay. It's just maybe the first and foremost the interest in climate change, issues, and then that.
How many members do you have?
Well, since we got established, I think we've got more than 40 journalists, that are members, and we are also excited to share with you that our board chairperson, she's also a veteran journalist. She's been in the media industry for many years. I'll be able, Maureen Nkandu,
oh,
yeah, she's our board chairperson, and she's basically been around for some time and vast experience both locally and internationally. So we really happy that we have a team that I feel will be able to push this agenda forward.
So you said you have 40.
40, more than 40 journalists.
So we make it to 42. Well, we run to.
Indeed.
So now,
and I mean,
let's weigh in the practical aspect of climate change. We ran a story where we were looking at Gwembe and the verge of hunger because of the dry spells that I've experienced. But before that, there was a lot of rain. Just 2 or 3 weeks after their dry spells and all their crops that they were basing their hope on in terms of the household food basket have been destroyed. What do you make of such a situation?
Thanks, Sharon. Basically, that is maybe a simple explanation of what climate change is. And scientists have been telling us that in this part of Africa, Southern Africa, is that since the 1960s, we are seeing a trend in terms of, temperatures getting warmer, and so with that kind of situation, temperatures getting warmer is that it affects the weather patterns. And basically that is the situation you have, analyzed, or that we are seeing in Gwembe, where in a short period there were floods. The next 10, it's dry, and what does that do? Basically the same result that we are getting is that there's hunger looming in that area. Because once the other part was that there was too much rains, maybe the floods affected crops, and now the next situation is that you have no rains, and so what does this do? It impacts human life, it impacts, animal life, it impacts tourism, it impacts infrastructure, it basically impacts all aspects of life. And that is the more reason why we are saying as journalists, we really need to come on board. Not only journalists, everybody else must come on board and see how best we tackle, some of these things. Like I have already hinted, is that we've been warned, especially the Southern Africa part, that we're going to see frequent cyclones, like Freddy in this case.
Ain't we late in terms of advocating for climate change? Because really, we experience all these things, and looking at climate change itself, it's not a one-day thing. And we've had several incidences that happen relating to climate change. Are we just waking up? Aren't we late in terms of advocating for what to grow, to sustain ourselves, what to do to protect ourselves, what to do to prevent the adverse effects, really?
Yeah. Well, I'll be able to use the cliche, better late than never, because sitting, not doing anything, will be a catastrophe for human life. That is basically the situation that we face. Better late than never, and we need to begin to move in that direction to reverse, the damage. And one thing to note is that all this that we are seeing is a result of human activities. The cutting down of trees, the encroaching on riverbanks, and all those have really put us where we are. The emissions, the carbon emissions, industrialization, all those human activities is the situation that we are seeing now. The use of, chemicals also in agriculture. Certain chemicals in agriculture have got an impact, the fertilizers and all that. And so these are the results that we are seeing. So to sit back and say, let's watch the situation as it is, basically that would be consigning ourselves to disaster and doom for human life.
Interesting. Now, let's also look at the day that brings us here to have this conversation, to reflect on one of the aspects. That's why I brought Forester Day. We understand that Zambia, just like many other countries, is affected by the issue of deforestation. And deforestation, Zambia continues to lose about 200,000 to 300,000 metric tons of forest annually. However, these statistics has been there for a long time, and it seems measures we are taking are not yielding results. What do we need to do as a country to protect the forest? Do we understand the value of forest?
Yeah, thanks very much, Patrick, for that question. And like you've mentioned, 21st March will be World Forest Day, and as the Media Network Action on Climate Change, we've partnered with CrossPark. CrossPark is a tourism and conservation, park east of Lusaka, and so we'll be having this day there, celebrating this day or commemorating this day there, because we feel we have to do this, and the park basically for us sets or we are taking this event into the forest, so to speak, because the park is basically in a forest, as it were. So we're trying to remove the event from the jungle, or the concrete jungle of Lusaka that we have created, which is also a problem, and try and celebrate it in the forest itself. So that's what will be happening on the 21st, and so you are invited to come through, and of course we'll extend and invite other partners out there that can come through and be part of this event. Yeah, so in trying to address...
What do you want to really focus on, especially on this day? What are you reflecting on?
Yeah, basically it's to create awareness. We've taken this event to the park because the park attracts the same cross park we're talking about. It attracts, school children. It attracts, church people. So there is a diversity of people that go to this park, and we felt we'll be able to reach out to this, audience. Added to that, there will be also a media tour where we'll be able to take the media around and appreciate, the forest itself, how the park has tried to integrate the forest into trying to modernize or bring in the modern aspect of, life, as it were, or buildings in that park. So that will also be part of what will happen in a media tour. We expect to have a guest of honor there that will be able to speak to the World Forest Day itself and what we need to do. You did talk about how much forest Zambia loses annually. It's quite massive, and so this is part of the awareness that we want to try and raise, so that people are aware that we really need to protect our forests, because really we are intertwined, we are linked. Yeah, once we destroy the forest, we are basically destroying ourselves. Even here where we are sitting, Patrick, I can see this is a product of the forest.
Exactly.
But so often we don't, we take it for granted.
Yeah.
We take it for granted, but overexploitation is a threat. So we need to begin to use our forests sustainably.
You talked about reversing the ills of climate change effects. At what cost are we going to do that? When we look at government and its willingness to champion this cause of reversing these ills, let's talk about the forest areas, the reserve areas that have been degazetted, regazetted, however you can call it. Is this enough political will to ensure that the climate change agenda is propelled to a level where we can simply say we are safe as a country?
Thanks very much. Excuse me. Yes, I would want to agree and say yes, there is political will. I'll speak to... We saw the President Hakainde Hichilema at COP26, where he went and pledged that Zambia will be able to deal with the deforestation by the year 2030. I think that demonstrates political will. Not only that, we've also seen, I think, in this year's budget, there's been an increase in terms of what goes to environmental protection. Of course, we can do more, but also important was the creation of the Ministry of Green Economy and the Environment.
Is it doing enough? Or the ministry is just moving around?
Well, I think those moves, I think, gives an indication of, I think, a political will to try and push that agenda. And I think we have seen that commitment. I think it does come out in the speech from the President. He's been expressing concern. I think even the Minister of Green Economy, I think, has also, on so many forums, shared the concern that we need to deal with deforestation. Yes, I think it would need all of us. One area that I think that raises concern, if we're going to look at deforestation in this country, is, I think, charcoal production and clearing, land, or cutting down trees to clear land in terms of agriculture purposes. And so these are the major, contributors to deforestation in this country. So what are we doing if we're going to talk about, addressing charcoal production, for instance? This is a huge industry. It supports so many families. What will it take to change the mindset of people that are into this, sector, to begin to look at alternatives? So I think maybe we need to heighten our conversation around that, so that people are aware, our discussion around that, so that we begin to send the right messages. Because that is one area that we have to tackle. That is one area that we have to face. We commend neighbors like Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, they have banned, charcoal. When will Zambia take that step? Maybe we need to begin to sensitize our people, and so, like we are saying, the media has a role to play to begin to sensitize people that there are alternatives that can be gotten into, once one is moved from charcoal production. So
Are
I
you
think
able
that
to cite one of the practical steps that you feel government has taken in this fight? Because you have mentioned to say the president has said, the president has attended the COP, the minister has done this, but then practical steps that we can be able to point at.
Because you just pointed out the aspect of Zimbabwe.
Yes.
I haven't taken that bold decision. But on the aspect of Zambia, it is just a speech after speech and assurance after assurance that gives you as stakeholders the confidence that they are doing something. But on the practical aspect, are we really gaining traction?
Yeah, I think I'll still say yes. One other issue I can mention, we have seen the cabinet, resolving to amend, some of our laws. One of them is the Environmental Management Act. We have a bill now that is going to Parliament, trying to strengthen the law. So I think these are good, moves. Yes, I think at a journey of 1,000 miles, begins with one step. I think these are good moves and these are good indications. And so all of us need to come on board. Like I have indicated, the media, it is our role to, push on government, okay, on this agenda. Yes, government will share some of these things, but government maybe has so many competing needs to look at. So us in the environmental sector, we need to push government so that we move in that direction.
I want you to be honest.
Far, so good in terms of... I want you to
be honest, Mr. Perry. What do you think government should do? I'm seemingly not convinced with the response that you're giving me. I keep pushing you. Yeah. What do you think government should do?
What do we think government
should do? As the media network action on climate change, what do you think are the practical steps will give you a chance to suggest?
Yes. Because all these things are on paper. We understand and we appreciate the efforts being put in place. But we are talking now as journalists. I'm thinking, I've taken away the jacket of interviewing you. Yeah. I think government is not doing enough, at least according to me. But then I want you to give us at least practical steps, tangible steps.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I like the zeal that you've demonstrated. Really, it shows together, all of us joining forces, we can go somewhere. If you strongly feel,
you're not I'm addressing us for us to stop asking.
I'll be able to address your question. But I think, that is basically what will see the change that we want to see. The zeal, if there is something that you feel inside you that really needs to move in certain direction, then we push it. I think we'll be getting somewhere. I wanted to indicate in terms of what practical steps. One thing I must mention is that in this country, we've got so many laws, to deal with what maybe the challenges that we face. But maybe an aspect that normally lacks is the implementation. So I think maybe we want to urge government to be a bit more strict in implementing the laws that we have. We know we've got the Forest Act, for instance. It's got very interesting and very nice provisions, but you find there are some always lapses. The local authorities also at times have been a bit lax, in enforcing the Forest Act. Maybe also in terms of the inspectors, the forest inspectors, as it were, we don't maybe have enough in that aspect to be really monitoring in terms of what is happening, especially in the space of charcoal production. You've got huge trucks that are, rolling into Lusaka, without paying anything because maybe they have bribed some officer along the way. They're able to bring in that, So all these, and in fact, not only that, we've got even charcoal being exported without word from this country, especially into neighboring countries. All that is happening. Why is that happening? Basically, the law is there, but it is more to do with the laxity and the lack of implementation, where certain officers become corrupt and they forget looking at the bigger picture. Yes, you allow that truck of charcoal to export, but remember, those are the Zambian trees that have been cut. You're basically cutting the future of the future of our future generations, as it were. So I think it is, for me, as MENAC, would want to call for more action, for more implementation of the current laws that we have. If there are any gaps, maybe at that stage we can begin now to look at how best we can strengthen what already exists. But what already exists, we'd want to believe should be enough to deal with the challenges that we face.
Thank you very much, Mr. Piri. Your concluding remarks.
Well, thanks very much, Patrick, and thanks very much, Sharon, for this opportunity. Our concluding remarks is that we look forward to everybody else joining us on the 21st.
Interesting. There you have it. Our dear viewers, in conversation, we were talking to Media Network Action Against Climate Change. And I had the executive coordinator, Mr. Camnet Perry. He is a seasoned journalist, but however, they have moved on the other side and to make sure that they champion climate change and media development issues. And we'll continue to interact with them to champion the agenda against climate change, because climate change is real and it is really affecting us as a country. And right now, we'll just zoom in one story, Sharon, on the other side.
Talking about issues to do with climate change, where the Zambia Forestry Department says the country has continued losing forest cover at an alarming rate of about 250,000 hectares annually due to human activity, among other factors. Speaking during a tree planting exercise at Arakan Girls Secondary School Tuesday, Zambia Forestry Department, Lusaka District Forest Officer Dorothy Mulenga adds that the urban areas should also be considered for tree planting, noting that the focus has mostly been in rural areas where reforestation has been taking place. Let's look at this story as we zoom out our guest.
Zambia's goal to effectively combat climate change and its impacts by the year 2030 is being countered by a number of human activities such as indiscriminate tree cutting, which has resulted in changing seasons in the country, manifesting in a change of weather patterns. The country has over the past few years experienced a problem of floods in some areas and droughts in others, leading to displacement and a concern of food security. The Zambia Forestry Department says the country is currently losing about 250,000 hectares of forest every year, further threatening the well-being of future generations. Zambia Forestry Department Lusaka District Forest Officer Dorothy Mulenga was speaking at Arakan Girls Secondary School in Lusaka, where the Sustainable Timber Traders Association of Zambia led the girls in planting 35 trees around the school.
It aggressively amasses the wind, which eventually results to rain. That trees are a source of a brighter future. So the trees, apart from just bringing in the rain that we are talking about here, they also protect us from strong winds, the hurricanes, and they also help in in issues that concern food security in terms of improving and also increasing the food security.
Meanwhile, Sustainable Timber Traders Association of Zambia Vice President Paddy Sununu says charcoal burners need to be educated on the dangers of deforestation.
We work with the charcoal burners too by engaging them in tree planting as an alternative business venture. So we give them seeds of different trees, and once the trees are grown, they sell them for money, and the turn stems their firewood. In this, we are creating sustainable livelihood and preserving the environment. The model has worked well so far.
Pupils at the school have voiced out on the importance of youth being involved in fighting climate change.
We know our attitude towards the planet will determine its mankind's survival in the future. To the government and association boards and members, we are with you, and we read for the case, and we stand with you for the sake of preserving our future.
It is hoped that such initiatives will drive the country towards its agenda of attaining a green environment. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Camnet Breakfast with me, Sharon Kalimbula, and Patrick Soko on the other chair. And we were having an environmental conversation. At least we've played two stories regarding that. And our colleagues from the Media Network on Action Against Climate Change?
Yeah, Media Network Action Against Climate Change.
They are our fellow scribes, and it's good to see them depart, at least from the mainstream media of reporting he said, she said, into championing matters of climate change. Indeed, it takes concerted efforts, and the more reason why this administration saw it fit to create an independent ministry that would specifically look at issues to do with climate change. It's a global concern, and each country needs to take its fair share of fighting this so that they can at least sustain its people. And when you look at climate change, Patrick, it affects everybody, and it affects the most vulnerable even worse. You look at farming communities, Patrick, that are highly dependent on rain-fed agriculture, and then if at all climate change affects heat, and you have either more rains or less rains, their food basket is disturbed. And therefore it's important for people to begin to have this information, understand it, and so that they can do the right thing depending on what climatic condition they're going to experience in a particular season. And at some point I had a conversation with William Chilufya. He's from Hivos, Southern Africa, and he said, you know, we've got a problem with our Met department. It's supposed to give information to the people way in advance so that they plan ahead. He spoke about farmers. When they're given information to say, okay, this year we're not going to have enough rain due to this, they will know what type of crops to plant so that they are food secure. But then we just let the farmers roll, you know, the way they can roll. They'll plant the usual maize, monocropping that we are in as a country, you know. And then we don't have rains. We don't have the weather that supports the growth of that maize to full maturity. That means there'll be hunger, and they'll be calling on DMMU. They'll be calling on government to give them food. And that's different ballgame, Patrick, where you're given 3 bags of maize, or maybe 3 bags of mealie meal. That is a 10 kg or 12.5 kg. How much are you going to eat? You know, how much are you going to sustain your families with that? So it calls for concerted efforts. And I'm just impressed that the media are beginning to move away from the usual rhetoric of politics that we are known for, to champion different agendas that can help us become a better people at individual level and national level. And we surely hope that indeed government will look at this institution and partner with it and work with it to champion this agenda.
Yeah, interesting organization it is. It reminds me of how effective the organization for Mr. Alon Chansa, the National Action for Quality Education. You would see them, they do not compromise on their stance in that they will say things as they are. While sometimes trade unions teach that representing the education sector may choose to take a side or avoid speaking on issues directly. The National Action for Quality Education has been there to advise government on various policy pronouncements pertaining to the education sector, and they have been an effective tool in terms of champion the agenda for quality education in Zambia. So even this organization, the Media Network Action on Climate Change, it is going to be able to champion this agenda on climate change and the aspect of the media in terms of how the media can effectively contribute and participate. It ultimately the issue around climate change is also about bridging the gap between the scientists and the journalists, because at the end of the day, the scientists are doing the research pertaining to various issues pertaining to weather variations, on terms of seed varieties, and in terms of quite a number of issues that go into issues pertaining to the environment. But how do they bridge the gap in terms of communicating that information? I think that's where this organization comes in, because you know, it is important that while the experts on the other side are there, the journalists also have to play their part to simplify the information and also disseminate it accordingly for easy understanding to the viewers or to the listeners or to the readers. So it is quite important that we continue to be forward thinking as a country and always try to put in place modalities that help us to work against issues that threaten our society or our existence, because climate change really threatens our existence. If you have not seen that, you can just look at how Cyclone Freddy has devastated Malawi and Mozambique, and if you see most bodies are still being picked up in terms of, in Malawi because of the mudslide. We had the landslides in terms of river overflows. So you see that's quite devastating. unless you are in that condition, that's when you can see. But you know, Malawi is the proximity is just so it tells you that, you see, it may affect Chipata in Eastern Province. It may come to affect Lusaka. So we need to always be prepared and proactive to ensure that we put in place climate change resilient measures to ensure that we are cushioned.
Indeed, Patrick, a lot of issues can be talked about when it comes to climate change. It is an animal. It is a cancer that needs to be fought. Of course, it's a long-term thing. It's like advocacy. You never get the results instantly, but we can start now by replanting the trees, afforesting, and ensuring that other related environmental degradation practices are done away with. Also, we need to take cognizance of the fact that climate change is not only about trees and things. We can also talk about the environment, you know, throwing different things in the environment, plastics, pollution. All those things contribute to climate change, and therefore we need to ensure that we get to practice good practices of preserving the environment and fighting climate change. However, let's look at one of the stories that we ran yesterday from Mombwa, where local government and rural development minister Gary Nkombo encouraged local authorities to buy earth-moving equipment and start working on feeder roads to avoid government spending a lot of money on contractors who do shoddy works. Speaking when he paid a courtesy call on Mombwa District Commissioner Namukolo Hayumbu Tuesday, Mr. Nkombo said the past government spent huge sums of money paying private contractors who did shoddy works in rural roads. He disclosed that in Mombwa District alone, 2 feeder roads were paid for, but the works done did not match the value of the money spent by government. Let's look at this story, among other stories.
A good road network is said to be a catalyst for development, especially in rural areas where farming is the main economic activity. Mombwa Central constituency is one such area where a good road network means sustainable livelihoods for the faring community to markets. Tuesday, the constituency, using Constituency Development Fund, handed over a grader worth 2.6 million kwacha. Speaking when he paid a courtesy call on Mombwa District Commissioner before handing over the grader to the community, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Gary Nkombo hopes that this will reduce the cost of feeder road maintenance in the area, thereby saving government money which can be channeled to other needy areas.
Here in Mombwa, I think there are 2 roads that were assigned to these rural road contractors, whose performance, to me, are below par. And there are huge amounts of money that your councils have signed in terms of what they call interim payment certificates. We owe them a lot of money, which money you could buy maybe 5 sets of the equipment that you're buying now. I mean, I'm talking about invoices in millions of kwachas. And so a motor grader will be about 8 million kwacha or somewhere there, about plus or minus. These people are owed so much money. And so as a government, we decided to discontinue these contracts in order to save money and optimize. So much so that if you could even look in the next 5-10 years to buy another grader, so that you do your rural road maintenance much faster, because we have a short window between the rain season and the time the food is ready for collection and bringing to the market, and also before the other onset of the rain season. So I think that it's a solution that we must embrace.
And Mombwa District Commissioner Namukolo Hayumbu took advantage of the minister's presence by updating him on the advantages of increased constituency development fund.
Our district is an area is an agricultural district. The machine will help us to do the feeder roads and also the access roads. And it has come at a very good time.
Meanwhile, Mombwa Central Member of Parliament Credo Nanjua has disclosed that over 1,000 desks have been made using CDF funds.
Feeder roads has been an issue
that we think now we can come up with a good solution of having routine road maintenance in every after the season. Otherwise, we are so grateful.
Constituency, we are glad that you found time to come and be with us as we celebrate this big milestone for the constituency, where we have that good moving equipment that has been procured under CDF. We are glad to indicate that the increment of CDF has really brought a lot of value to the constituency, as this year really treats a lot of milestones that we've been able to achieve under the different categories that are there.
Beatrice Chabaya, Camnet News.
The trend of general workers employed at various companies protesting is ever on the rise in Zambia, as they cite poor pay and worker mistreatment at various companies. These are workers from Sino Hydro Construction Company in Lusaka's Material constituency, who Tuesday morning decided that they have had enough of alleged ill mistreatment and poor pay and decided to down tools. The workers cite non-remittance of their funds to the National Pension Scheme Authority NAPSA, despite monthly deductions being done, among other issues.
Tipemba kuti ileti ya 5 kwacha 48 bachose bachikwezeka ku bete fike pa 8 kwacha 48 iliko bwino kozi mukalangana ma commodities pali manje vadula vile. I company yatu tikakuzani kuti lunch allowance it's 9 kwacha, so who can buy nsima ya 9 kwacha according na nchito ene savings si savings za 9 kwacha, you know. Transport is 6 kwacha, lunch ndiye 9 kwacha, sorry. Transport ya 6 kwacha nangu imopochokera ku media yanu kuja kubwera ku. Are you sure what mwa kwanza kusevenza 6 kwacha kuti mfike ku? No. We've been working almost for 5 years. Like in a Parwand. Na womba sana muri company. But if you check my NAPSA account, apena pa media so na checking 0.0. But every time. Every month. I've taken a complaint ku NAPSA kudia. Natwala over my missing contribution. Tamwa banangu wanu, but ama payslip yandinga ati mirangi. Mwachitaka create ndala machine. Oshingsa.
The new minimum wage will come into effect on the 1st April 2022. But 2023 April. But government, company is food irela ndokwe bati. Ikesa abafuti affect government atiali rundako, ikesa affect kwamba 1st August 2023. Elo futinga marosha sana. Elo tuafume mkusaina ma contract. And arepo mu August, ni 6 months ili hapa. Ni nishina mwamfaka.
Message kwako kuja, izabwera, izakurangisa ati ndalama zako zangena za NAPSA. But kuti bapeleke kuja ipeze kakulibe. So ine nakwanisa kunyamuka mu mpamu zanga sinauze muntu aliyense naenda ku NAPSA kuja napeza company ya kudala ilipo hapa China choko menenzo sevenza ndende kama zanga zinangena. But according kuchoka mu 2020 bora fika lero penika mbapa ndalama za Hydro NAPSA mama ni juba 200 one something kulibora one kwacha manje zindalama za mene bajuba zive kuti pamela timaenda nikuti.
Can you pay a house in a 300 whereby you got a family? 30% wakuru tina ma families. Avisinka pa president balakamba kudarati effective January all people should be what given money money increment, salary increment. But here there are no salary increment. So what we want salary increment. That's our main reason we are here, one salary increment.
Meanwhile, company human resource manager Mr. Richard Sampa, who declined to be filmed, states that the company has been failing to make monthly contributions at NAPSA for some workers, as their national registration cards are in multiple names, hence being rejected by NAPSA. He has further dismissed other allegations, stating that the company pays within the range of the minimum wage. The workers have since called on the head of state to take an interest in the matter, stating that the Ministry of Labour and Social Security has not been helpful. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
There you have it. Workers' issues continue to be a problem in Zambia, and We hope that the ministry responsible for labor will address that issue. You know, they have quite a number of issues pertaining to labor matters, but those are workers from Sino Hydro. And we hope that they apply to be addressed. You know, some salaries are really nothing to talk about.
Nothing to write home about. They are just too low, and you're wondering how people are managing.
Again, it is not coming.
And then it's not coming. And then at the same time, one of the complaints that came out was that their NAPSA contributions are being deducted,
so they're not
not being remitted. So they're complaining about that. Really, how would you even deduct somebody's a contribution and not take it where it's supposed to be? Because this is their package at the end of the day.
But where is NAPSA? Because what I know is that they do inspect. Is it because they would want institution they have interest in?
Could they be conniving with some of the officers there?
Not to visit them.
Not to visit them. Those are the questions we need to be responding to, because you know, the contribution of NAPSA is they'll get a deduction from your salary as an employee, and then an employer also has to top up something for you. So maybe they are trying to run away from the issue of topping up, and
well, but that's not whether they like it or not. They have to do that because at the end of the day, they have to. Yes, they have to make sure they just honor that statutory obligation.
Indeed, Patrick, more issues into the labor sector, and to make the matter worse, the minimum wage that one of the guys spoken to mentioned about will only be implemented hopefully in August this year, despite it being announced
it was supposed to be in January.
It was also a disadvantage doing that. They should have done all the consultations before it was announced, because this, to some extent, has stopped other employers from effecting new wages before the minimum wage. Now they are waiting, you know, because you'll find that people that were supposed to be for in a certain bracket were getting more than what the minimum wage has stipulated, and their employers thought of increasing the salaries, but because the minimum wage is a little bit lower than expected, they will not do that. They will not effect the increment which they probably always do on a yearly basis. You know, they will wait for the minimum wage to be implemented so that they can benefit from them. Employers always want to spend less. Everybody in business wants to spend less and earn more. So government announcing prematurely, for me, I think it was a wrong move.
We also had an interesting story, Sharon, on the Zambia police, where they are currently, Zambia Police Service is currently on a manhunt for 3 gang members who escaped after a gang of 6 criminals was confronted by members of a security company while patrolling around the Grey Zulu area in Lusaka's Makeni residential area. So we get to zoom in that story. In case you want to give us your perspective on the stories we have zoomed in, the phone lines are open. Let's just zoom in that story. We'll be back on the other side.
Those 3, when they were searched, they were found with a pistol and 2 magazines which were loaded with ammunition and other house-breaking implements. So police were called in, and the 3 were arrested. As we are saying, they are currently detained in police custody, yet to be charged. Yes, so what it is we want to urge members of the public just to be alert, because these are criminals, and look at the time when they went to conduct their activities. We're talking about 01 hours. So we want to thank the security company, that is Eagle Security Company, which was conducting patrols in Grey Zulu area in Makeni for the good job done. And going forward, we continue working together with these security companies to make sure that all criminal elements in our communities are wiped out. That is not a police vehicle, no. That's a Toyota IST, these smaller vehicles, unregistered. They just scratched on the side mirrors to say ZP1. That's not a police vehicle. All police vehicles are not scribed on are not written on side view mirrors. So those are just criminal elements just trying to take advantage of the situation.
The subordinate court has heard testimony from a 17-year-old girl of Lusaka on how she was defiled at knife point by 2 men of Matero compound. The victim gave her evidence before Magistrate Crispin Hampungani against the accused, Michael Chishala, who is alleged to have committed the offense back on the 23rd of July 2021. The victim narrated that on the material day she had gone with her father to purchase her school shoes at Mandevu Junction in Osaka, but they had found the price of the shoes to be high. She was later told by her father to return back home. According to the victim, on her way back home, she met the two accused persons whom she never saw before. However, they convinced her to go with them after they called her by her name. The court also heard that the accused person went with the victim at an old woman's house within Matero, threatened her with a knife and took turns to defile her. In her further testimony, the 17-year-old girl disclosed that she never told anyone about what had transpired on that material day and only discovered later that she was 8 months pregnant. In this matter, the accused, 27-year-old Michael Chishala, is facing 1 count of defilement of a child, while his co-accused, only identified as Sam, is still on the run. Meanwhile, the victim's mother testified to the court that she discovered that her daughter was pregnant after a neighbor touched her daughter's stomach for confirmation. Trial continues. Miriam Kaimba reporting for Camnet TV News.
Indeed, the suspects are on the run and police is on the manhunt. It's important to always take care of yourselves, put in those security measures. It's like theft has increased of late.
Police language is also not gender sensitive. I'm imagining if it was a lady.
It was a woman.
They were going to say woman hand, but they'll just say man hand.
They'll just say man hand. Gender activists, they are taking into consideration all aspects, all angles. Yeah. That's interesting, Patrick. But anyways, that's where we wrap it up this morning. Join us again tomorrow as we continue having conversations relating to youths. And tomorrow, hopefully, we'll have youths on set talking about their plight. Remember, on Sunday we just commemorated Youth Day, and this week is dedicated to the youths, just like last week was dedicated to the women, us, and this week now also I'm enjoying these benefits. Last week it was us, and this week again it's us, because I'm a youth. So yeah, we will continue to have these conversations at least today and tomorrow, and see how best we can have our plight heard. Otherwise, thank you so much for choosing Camnet TV. Good morning.